Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
While the Adidas X series has had its wins over the years, something that longtime fans of Adidas speed boots have been asking for is the return of the F50 adizero. And inside this box, I am pleased to report that we have something that is pretty well the return of the F50. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas X CrazyFast Plus in the pre-release special edition Crazy Light colorway. This has caused a little bit of confusion in that it is a special edition release and a lot of people think it's a one-off, but this is in fact the replacement for the X Speed Portal. It's just coming out initially in this special colorway, hence the $300 retail price. We can only hope that moving forward, normal colorways with slightly different graphics will retail for a little bit less. It's basically the same thing they did with the Speed Flows, where initially the boots launched as a special edition messy colorway. Nonetheless, despite some carryover elements, the majority of this football boot is all new, and I am so happy to say is a gigantic improvement over the Speed Portal it replaces. Which is why in today's review, we're gonna discuss how these differ from the Speed Portal, what's new, what's the same, what's better, what's worse, and ultimately, where do these rank amongst all the very good speed boot options that are currently out there? Because I definitely think they've taken a huge step up from the Speed Portal with the new CrazyFast. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair of these for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you enjoy these brutally honest reviews, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So first things first, I just want to clear up some confusion regarding the name of these boots. This is in fact the CrazyFast Plus. You can see it there on the tongue as well as on the insole. And what's interesting is that it's the Plus model that has a lacing system. Typically Plus models have been reserved for the laceless option within the Adidas lineup. However, that's obviously different for this generation of X. What does that mean for a 0.1 variation? I don't really know. And obviously an entire line of X CrazyFast boots will likely be launching in the very near future. So we'll just have to wait and find out. Nonetheless, this is the Crazy Light special edition colorway, and that's because the colors and graphics are a nod to the 2014 Adidas F50 adizero Crazy Light, effectively making this the Adidas CrazyFast Plus Crazy Light. Not the best name, I know. But I do think they look really cool, and a nice little detail that I didn't even realize until I had the boots in person is that the heel liners as well as the little stripe on the back are actually mismatched, but everything else about the boots is the same left to right. Obviously, just the green is always on the outside and the red is always on the inside. Colors and graphics aside, I've seen so many comments since these have been unveiled with people suggesting that this is a return to the days of the F50 adizero, and I couldn't agree more. The general shaping of the boot, the return to a U-throat construction with a standalone tongue and central lacing system, something that I think made the F50 adizero such a good football boot when it came to fit and overall comfort. Going for something more simple, I definitely think is going to be a win in the long run for Adidas, especially with everything having one-piece uppers. This kind of sets them apart in terms of being different, and I think there definitely are some benefits in terms of fit and adjustability. Also, the fact that the Plus model isn't laceless is also really interesting because, again, it kind of shows a commitment to better lockdown and a better overall fit, which, while there have been great laceless speed boots from Adidas in the past, I do think that the speed boot concept, having that one-to-one responsive, speedy feel on your feet, if you will, typically lends itself way better to a football boot where you can tie the laces a little bit tighter and have that upper wrap your foot and secure it as tightly as possible. With another major nod to the F50 adizero being an effort to make the CrazyFast as light as possible. So with that in mind, let's weigh them. Both in the same size 9.5 US, I have of course the new CrazyFast and the Speed Portal 0.1. I picked the 0.1 model because it does have laces. I feel like that's the best comparison, and it's also a newer colorway with the plastic insert in the sole plate rather than the Carbitex one, mainly because that's exactly what you're going to find on the new CrazyFast. So starting off with the Speed Portal 0.1, you can see that they weigh in at 6.95 ounces, the equivalent of 197 grams, which is by no means heavy, but there are certainly lighter options in the top end speed boot range from other brands, we'll throw on the CrazyFast Plus, and you can see that they weigh in at significantly less, 6.1 ounces, the equivalent of 172 grams, which is a weight loss of 25 grams in total. And I realize that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually a significant amount of weight considering that these two boots use the same tooling, and at 6.1 ounces or 172 grams, that would actually make the CrazyFast Plus the lightest speed boot currently on the market, just edging out the New Balance Furon V7 Pro. And for the first time in a while, it's a pair of speed boots from Adidas that rivals the weight of the F50 adizero series, which was always known for being lighter than anything else. And to be clear, I'm not saying lighter boots are going to make you faster by any means at all, but in terms of giving you that specific feel that so many people loved about the F50 days, you're getting that back with the CrazyFast Plus. So how did they save all that weight? Well, basically with a new upper. This material that they've used is called Aero Cage Plus, and I'm sure we're going to see very different applications in terms of graphics versus what we have here, but more or less this kind of trends somewhere in between what we saw with X Ghosted and X Speed Flow, in that it is a textile-based synthetic material with a really thin polyurethane top layer and then an internal support cage that's effectively made out of a thin, soft microfiber material. The end result being something that is incredibly thin, basically has no weight to it whatsoever. There is certainly no padding here, so from a protection standpoint, if you get stepped on, an ambulance might be necessary, but if you're looking for that incredibly raw, barefoot feel for the ball, you're definitely getting it from this football boot. This is reminiscent of what we've seen on 99 gram adizeros in the past. This is reminiscent of something like the Puma Evo Speed SL. So from a long-term durability standpoint, obviously it's very difficult to comment on that when the boots have just come out, but the boots are effectively as thin as you can get without them feeling flimsy on your feet. I would say that there's a surprising amount of structure coming from this upper, and the way that they've reinforced it internally actually does a really good job of giving you that secure, responsive sensation. Are they quite to the same standard as something like a Nike Mercurial model? Definitely not. There's a little bit of give to the upper, but I do think that lends itself well to the boots ultimately feeling more comfortable. And when you compare it to the super rigid and plasticky feel of the upper on X Speed Portal, whether it was the Plus or the 0.1 model, this is a gigantic improvement in pretty much every single way. From a texture standpoint, there is a little bit of grittiness to the surface of the upper, but for the most part, grip on the ball is kept to a minimal. I would say it has a relatively slick finish. And then of course, the central lacing system with the U-throat construction, I really love that from an adjustability standpoint. Although I will say the tongue itself is just super thin, super flimsy microfiber, which feels fine once you tie the boots tight and kind of adjust the tongue, but I wish it would have had slightly more structure just so it didn't bunch up quite as much as it bends with your foot. Something to be aware of. And also I really found, and this is something that's going to vary a lot from person to person depending on the specific shape of your feet, I personally have relatively low arches, which means that you end up getting these really big bulges on the side of the ankle, as you can see by this footage right here, kind of a top-down view of looking down at your feet. It doesn't affect the lockdown, it doesn't affect the performance of the boots, but it is something to be aware of, and it's something that I'm personally not a big fan of. Moving to the rear, thankfully Adidas has removed all the extra bulk that was found on the Speed Portal by maintaining a low-cut construction, but just having significantly less padding. There's still an internal structure at the very back. You get these little stability wings on either side, given that the boots do use the same tooling, so still really solid through the heel area, but you can see the edges are lined in this really soft kind of microfiber material. The heel liner is all microfiber. I would say they nailed it in terms of the amount of padding used. The general step-in comfort and heel lockdown is fantastic, both with the shape as well as the materials used, and the insole is pretty much a standard Adidas X insole in that it has this soft microfiber liner on the surface, some minor perforations through the midfoot and heel, and it's made from a solid layer of relatively thick foam. So realistically, if they wanted to shave another 5 to 10 grams, they could go with a much thinner insole with more perforations and make the boots even lighter. But instead, it looks like they chose to prioritize a little bit more comfort. Which brings us to the base of the CrazyFast Plus, which is a direct carryover from X Speed Portal. Not surprising, given that Adidas tends to run the same tooling for 2 generations. However, they have changed the name to Aero Plate, which is kind of funny because you can see it still says Speed Frame within the mold of the plastic itself right here under the heel, but it's a plastic sole plate with the plastic insert. We did obviously see the controversy of the Carbotex insert kind of seemingly going away out of nowhere and being replaced with the plastic one. That does seem to be the case moving forward. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see the Carbotex insert come back, but in terms of overall feel, it's still relatively responsive. Like I talked about in past videos, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference in terms of feel between the plastic insert and the carbon one, which is kind of interesting in and of itself, but I definitely think from a premium standpoint, having the carbon would have been a little bit nicer, especially for the $300 retail price of these football boots. Overall though, I would still say it's an above average sole plate in terms of giving you that kind of snapback sensation that you expect from a pair of top end speed boots. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, again, exactly the same layout as the Speed Portal, really not that different from the last several generations of X model in terms of giving you plenty of bite when pushing off, but still a little bit of that freedom to twist and pivot, given that the studs do have a little bit more of a rounded shape for being mostly bladed. So not necessarily the most aggressive in the speed boot category, but overall very well rounded, and I don't think many people are going to complain about it. On feet, in my opinion, compared to the X Speed Portal, whether it's the 0.1 or the Plus, the new CrazyFast Plus is exponentially more comfortable and in general just has a better overall shape. I think a lot of that is down to the newer material, which is a lot less stiff and rigid. Instead, it's just super thin and very, very pliable, effectively giving you that sensation of not wearing anything at all. And I think the U-throat construction, along with the deep central lacing system, just allows for way better adjustability than the one-piece upper construction of the Speed Portals. The heel is hugely improved in terms of not feeling bulky and in general just having the perfect amount of padding. Great lockdown overall. The sole plate feels great underfoot. This has, again, a lot of elements to it that really remind me of the good old days of the F50 adizero. With, again, my one complaint being the little bit of bulging that I'm getting at the side of the ankle because I am a slightly lower arched foot type. So something to be aware of, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. It certainly doesn't affect the feel or performance of the football boot in any negative way. From a width perspective, they definitely have a slimmer overall profile, but because of that central lacing system and U-throat construction, there's plenty of expansion to the upper, so I think they will be suitable for most foot types as long as you don't have excessively wide feet. They lowered the volume in the toe box ever so slightly, which I think makes for a closer overall feel against your foot as well. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, and like I said pretty early on in this video, I think the CrazyFast Plus is a gigantic improvement over the X Speed Portal. And if in general you are looking for something that has that F50 adizero vibe about it, I think there's a lot to like about what they've done with the new CrazyFast Plus. With that said, I think it's easy to say they're an improvement over the Speed Portal, but how do they compare to the rest of the options in the speed boot category? And immediately my mind goes to the Nike Mercurial series, where I really feel like the Mercurial right now, especially with the Zoom Air tech, it's kind of its own thing. If you really want that, you're probably only considering Mercurials. So if it's not really a true Mercurial competitor, then what does it really compare to? Well, it's this, the Mizuno Alpha. They're two boots that have super thin textile uppers with an internal microfiber support structure, a central lacing system with a U-throat construction, and are both relatively lightweight with aggressive sole plates and stud patterns. These obviously, if you're talking about the made in Japan model, are more expensive at $320, but if you go for the Elite version, you can get them for $200 or less versus the $300 or let's assume $280 that you're going to end up paying for the CrazyFast Plus once it comes out in normal colorways. And as much as I like almost all the changes Adidas have made to the CrazyFast, I will say from a fit and comfort perspective, it just doesn't beat out the Mizuno Alpha, at least for me personally. The shape of your foot might change your overall opinion on which of these football boots is more comfortable, but for me, it would be Alpha over CrazyFast. But in general, if you're just looking for that F50 adizero fit and feel again, we are thankfully finally getting it back with the new CrazyFast Plus.